I'm Chetty, chairperson of the Ministerial Task Team on the voluntary exit options and pathways for captive lion breeding. Cam, appreciate your time this afternoon. Before we got straight into the conversation, just give us some insights into captive lion breeding, what it involves, and then let's talk about the issues.
Thanks very much, Hugo. Captive lions are essentially, it's lions that are kept in captivity, which is in cages. There's regulations around how they're kept in cages. But it's an entire process from the breeding of cubs to the rearing of lions to the hunting of lions. And after they're hunted, the bones are exported and as well as the skins and other parts of the lion. And the trophy, which is the head, is also taken back by the hunter. So this particular industry is, it's come under huge pressure from the NGO movements, from environmentalists, and a range of other people. But you have to understand that lions, particularly we come from Africa, they're revered as an iconic species. They're majestic animals. And, they're associated with our history, our stories, our natural heritage and the biodiversity. Thus, keeping these lions in captivity doesn't gel with its history, its majestic nature of it, and our, the sociology around us. So for that reason, and many other reasons, the captive lion industry has come under significant pressure. But just to give you some background, in 2018, Parliament held a colloquium, and it's best summarized by the chairperson who said, we need to come up with a solution as quickly as possible, as we can't allow the international reputation of this country to be soiled. We have a reputation of having wonderful and world-class facilities in biodiversity. So this particular image of captive lions and a specific part of captive lions. So when you breed captive lions and you don't take care of the animal welfare, the animal well-being, these animals look terrible. But more importantly, so this particular colloquium then led to a high-level panel that the minister established. And this panel came up with a 500-page report, brilliant report, a scientific report, and the majority of people in this particular panel have argued that we need to stop this particular or phase this particular practice out. So
Cam, let me ask a couple of questions. You've given us an interesting background to what transpires. Now, just to get you right, these breeders keep these lions, and then at some point they kill them. Do they hunt them? How are these lions killed before they're exported, before their bones are taken outside the country?
So you have they hunted. So you also have trade in live animals, but these animals are reared, and so they have no distinction between the danger of human beings that human beings pose with a gun. They are then taken to a facility and hunted, and sometimes moved to a facility and within days or weeks hunted. So they don't hide from human beings, or if they do hide, it's very seldom.
So these animals are, they're wild in nature, but obviously have been domesticated and then released into the wild, and pretty much moments later, they're then hunted and shot.
Yeah, they're habitated, was what we call them, because they don't sense the danger. So we have 9 provinces, and each of these provinces have different regulations. Some provinces will say, after taking them out of captivity, you put them into a hunting facility, and within 48 hours you can hunt them. Others within weeks, where you need to hunt them. So rewilding them and getting them to understand the dangers cannot be done within a few weeks or even 48 hours. So I think that's a major concern, and that's why a number of countries, not only locally, but internationally, a number of countries have banned this particular practice. So the US has done it, Australia has done it, parts of Europe have done this, and South Africa is the only country where we have organizations where these particular animals or particular lions that are held in captivity are hunted in that way, and to export bones as a result.
Now,
so
sure. So just to draw the line, we do have hunting as a business in the country, or
yes.
You know, we've got game farmers, and I think the president is one of those, a game farmer. So is this any different to how the game farmers operate? Those that would have lions or buffalo or other game on their farms?
So hunting lions in the natural habitat, I don't think there is significant opposition to that. There would be the people would, but there isn't significant opposition to it. Even hunting organizations themselves prefer that because they think it's a sport. But to hunt lions in captivity is not actually a sport.
No.
And that's why it's looked down upon by even hunting organizations, in parts of the world. But more importantly, it's given us a reputation because we seem to be the only country in the world that does this at this scale. So it's given us a reputation of being badly managing our wildlife. And this reputation is beginning to affect our tourism and other areas as well. So what we do see is that we see significant opportunity in biodiversity and in wildlife management. That will create jobs, that will create economic growth, that will promote tourism and so on. What we don't want to do is risk this by things like canned hunting or keeping animals in captivity and abusing them and so on. And while I say that, it's not every single facility owner that does it. Some people actually take care of the animals reasonably well, but still the practice of doing so is frowned upon.
Well, it certainly seems so. Now, there was a panel that was put in place by Barbara Creasy, and they identified that industry poses risks to the sustainability of wildlife conservation. And obviously this has resulted in a negative perception of South Africa. But there is a way out for some of those breeders at the moment. What is that plan, Cam?
So essentially what the minister has done very wisely is to say, how do we, given that the closing down the industry is going to have risks, how do we do this in an amicable way and try and get industry on board? So in getting industry on board, the task team has been discussing with a range of stakeholders, industry as well as facility owners and so on, about how do we exit this industry in an amicable way that gives you a win-win situation. So part of that is we're dealing with this in about 4 parts. The first part being the facility itself. How do we transform the facility? A number of the facility owners not only keep lion, but they have cattle and other agricultural activity. So perhaps one way, and this is on an individual basis, one way is to remove the lions from them and expand the other activities so that it's sustainable. And what the task team would do is, with each of the volunteers, look at this and discuss this in depth with them and come up with a strategy. The second part of this is, how do we take care of the lions? The first thing we'd have to do is ensure that the lions that are compromised are dealt with differently. So if they are in pain, etc., but recommended by a professional wildlife lion, those particular lions need to be humanely euthanized. But the remaining lions could be put into a facility which we call, a sunset facility. They'll live their lives and so on, or alternatively could be traded. And the third thing, which is fairly important, is we've been meeting, in some of the facilities with workers. We must ensure that the workers either get retrained to perform on their renewed farms or the repurposed farms, or move on to other facilities like the true sanctuaries that we're talking about and so on. So we need to protect all three. And that's why it's quite a complex issue, quite a complex discussion that we have with the industry. But certainly it's important. The high-level panel report has been adopted by Cabinet. The direction seems to be very, very clear. So what the volunteering option does is allows farmers to partner with government and through the panel and exit in a win-win way. So that's what we're trying to promote, so that we don't risk the economy in any way we don't, affect the livelihoods of vulnerable workers and so on.
Cam, a couple of questions, and the first one would be compensation. You've made it voluntary, so there are those that obviously won't volunteer and are reluctant to move. So for those that decide, okay, we are going to volunteer, what sort of compensation is available to them if they decide, we want to pull out altogether? There are also implications on the people that they employ, number one. And secondly, give us some number of how many of these breeders we have in the country, and almost an indication of the response or the reaction to these proposals.
Okay, just to give you a sense of the industry size, roughly, roughly around 519 facilities across the country, which hold about 7,464 lions in captivity, against what is kept in wild, which is between 3,000 and 3,500.
Wow.
And so it's a significant difference because this industry has grown significantly. Right? So I think coming back to issues of incentives, we don't call it compensation because it's not, it's not a forced exit out of this. It's a voluntary one. So we incentivize this through the cooperative discussions that we're having with industry. So where we are providing assistance is to say, let's assist in transforming your facility and the industry. Let's assist with the regulatory requirements that you would require to move from lion to another species that's acceptable to be farmed. Then there's a whole range of veterinary services that we would want to offer. So when lions are moved into other facilities, they would have to be sterilized because we want to prevent the breeding of those particular lions. So we will give incentives for sterilization, veterinary support, relocation, and also keeping lions in lifetime facilities. So the option is either to transform your current facility into a sunset lifetime facility or move it to a true sanctuary, and we'll be able to give that assistance. The third one is specifically to workers. And to the number of workers that we've spoken to, we've started to look at options for retraining workers. And in other biodiversity industries and sectors, there's huge potential in this. And thereby looking at these particular workers, retrain them for the existing industry, which is repurposed, or we could move them into the sanctuaries and lifetime facilities that are there.
Cam, I'm afraid we're going to have to call time on the conversation. Certainly appreciate those insights. Would have liked to have talked to you further, but I think you did well in clarifying your position.